Уважаемые участники Moscow Urban Forum 2016, мы начинаем пленарную сессию. Ответ на вызовы быстрорастущих мегаполисов, возможности технологий. Для приветственного слова на сцену приглашается мэр Москвы Сергей Собянин.
Good afternoon, dear friends, colleagues. This year, we have more than 70 delegations from tens of different countries, regions of Russia. And probably this is the most representative urban forum that has ever been hosted in Moscow recently. Of course, the number of the forum participants and the interest towards this forum is based on the fact that Moscow is evolving very dynamically, and today's the Moscow's platform is more and more interesting for experts, architects, for the managers. And partly the reason of that is that after the winter time we decided to organize this forum at the summer where the temperatures are more favorable. But seriously speaking, the problem of cities development while the urbanization process is going on worldwide, the increasing problems and challenges that face the cities during their development, billions of people living in the cities, all this requires more and more attention, greater thinking over the processes that are going on and the application of various technologies and different managerial decisions that should be made. I would like to say that big cities, the megacities, are the first who experience all those problems and challenges. But at the same time, these cities have more possibilities for the development. There is a conception and there is an opinion that cities are in conflict with the regions because they take away all the investments, human resources, plants, industries, finances. Well, partly this is true, but not completely, not entirely. And big cities, on the contrary, become the centers of attraction of new investments that do not go to any other city or town. The megacities become the centers of the new economic system, the new services for citizens. They become huge platforms, floors for distributing products, and they become financial centers for the development of the entire economies. And there is also the opinion that world cities, global cities are competing with each other, and there is a tough competence. This is true. And it's also true that we are complementary. We complement each other because we ensure communication, the connections between the regions in economy, technology, culture, experience exchange. And all this ensures the huge synergy in the development. We have similar problems. Modern challenges, migrations, safety and security issues, crowdedness, infrastructure development, and a number of other problems and challenges. All these problems that our cities are facing worldwide undoubtedly should be resolved, but we won't be able to resolve the problems without systemic approach, without comprehensive programs, without new technologies and large-scale mega projects. That's why today's forum is dedicated to all these aspects of urbanism policy, such as new technologies and mega projects. As for the city technologies and the urban technologies, I'm certain that it's not possible to govern the modern big city without technologies, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the cities create such technologies themselves and then disseminate these technologies to all the regions and the countries. The second topic for discussion is mega projects. Well, everyone believes that this is the huge construction site, and partly this is so. You have seen in Moscow some of the stands, those projects on the metro construction, railway construction, the Moscow railroad construction, the construction of networks, grids, stadiums, and a number of other mega projects that are expressed in the construction volumes and the scale. New technologies can also be mega projects. We cannot just see them, we cannot see the finished building, but sometimes these projects play the pivotal role in our life. You have seen the examples at this exhibition, the system of city referendum, where more than 1 million citizens are involved. We have the People's Control platform, which helps us to govern the city. About 600 persons are registered on this platform. Then we have the single medical Medicare information system that helps people to be subscribed to the doctor. Then we can also control the financial information flows in the healthcare industry, and all this improves the life quality. Intellectual and transportation system, or smart transportation system that covers the entire city and ensures the smooth movement of traffic. Millions of cars and vehicles are involved in this system and are managed and regulated from the one city center. And also these mega projects also include such simple and elementary things about which nobody will even think of, such as the improvement or beautification of the ordinary yard close to the blocks of apartments. But if we have thousands of such yards, this is a mega project. Is it a mega project when we build just a small park, but when we have hundreds of parks, hundreds of hectares that are beautified and improved at the best global level? These are also mega projects. The restructuring of the small city street, is it a mega project? But when we have 3.5 thousand city streets, of course this is the mega project, and here we need to adhere to a new approach. We need a new program, the project. Undoubtedly, megacities cannot be developed without mega projects and without mega technologies. Precise decision, local decisions doesn't mean much. This is just PR campaigns. But we should focus on the things which relate not just to 1 or 2 or 10 people, but to the millions of us, to the thousands of people. To implement such projects in a huge city, we always need to come to consensus. We need to organize the dialogue. We need to come to common terms. We need a compromise in decision-making. But this decision-making process shall not take too much time, shall not take decades. We shall take urgent steps, not to lag behind global trends and not to lose our competitiveness. To do all that, we need to discuss experience of other cities, use the experience of other cities and regions. That is why we are all here at the Moscow Urban Forum. I'm certain that this forum will help us to make the step forward towards the convenient, comfortable city for people. Thank you and welcome to Moscow. Appearing thousands of years ago, the largest cities become the major engines and drivers of the human history. From century to century, they were progressing as the progressive centers of communication that gave people trade, policy, science, industry, and art. Technical progress is still supporting the endless growth of megalopolis. The number of people in megacities increased by 100 times. About 3/4 of the economy of the world is located in megacities. The huge opportunities that we have in Moscow Urban Forum 2016 will be discussed. The moderator of the plenary session, senior partner of McKinsey and the company, Yermolai Solzhenitsyn. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I see that we're overcrowded. It's a great pleasure for me to see so many guests here who come to Moscow. It's a great honor for me to moderate this opening session, and today's topic is technologies. And of course, technologies cannot be treated separately from planning, from transport, from architecture, from the governance, management, and communication, separately from people. And that's why technologies is the topic which is important for everything and everyone, and I'm happy to see so many guests here from Russia and from abroad. I see that the interest towards Moscow and those innovations and novelties that we have in Moscow is really high. At the international level, we can see people who come here not just to share their experience, but also to borrow something new. And understanding that it's very important to raise the bar to the global level, we would like to start this forum with the 4 speakers. We're going to have 4 experts, 4 panelists who will tell us about different aspects and urban development and city development. And after that, we will have the traditional discussion format of the plenary session. Our experts are English speakers. Others.
Anthony Townsend to come up to the stage. Anthony. To introduce you, but on the screen it said everything about you. But in any case, from New York, from the Center for Transportation Policy and Management, I understand you're an author of a book about smart cities. People have heard a lot about smart cities. Maybe start us off and tell us about what are the key things that people should know as they think about this term.
Great, thank you.
The floor is yours. If you're comfortable here.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here. What I want to talk about is how smart cities learn. And the reason why I gave the talk this title is that I want to focus less on the technology. And the reason for that is everywhere I go around the world, people ask me, what does a perfect smart city look like? What is the list of technology? What are the things that we need to have in order to make our cities smart? And I feel like they have this image in mind. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, his ideal image of the ideal human being, the perfect vision of what we can become. And this was in many ways how architects and urbanists thought of cities in the 20th century when they designed cities like the Garden City, Ebenezer Howard's 1905 plan for the ideal alternative to the industrial city of London, which was covered in coal smoke and soot and overcrowded and unhealthy. And in fact, that was a mistake then, and it's even more of a mistake now, because we live in a world that is changing so fast that thinking that we can design a perfect city and that that design will still be the right solution 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years now when we finish building that city is a terrible, terrible mistake. In fact, we live in a world where we have to be agile, we have to be flexible. And what we have to do is we have to learn how to evolve. We have to learn how to learn. And I think a much better model is this famous chart from Time magazine, The Progress of Man. And we need to think about this in terms of digital maturity. How do we go from being essentially infants, where we can barely sense what's going on in the world around us through digital technology, to becoming wise and being able to understand and really know how to behave in this world? And another way I think about this is we don't want a plan for a smart city that's like a book where we go and we sit down and we write down everything we want in it once. We want a plan for a smart city that's more like a computer, where we write a piece of code, we load it, we use it, and then when the world changes around us, we change the code and we run it again. We need to be able to change on the fly. Now, this is important. I think it's also important to recognize that the smart city is nothing new. Cities have always been an information technology. They've always been based on information technology. The Roman Empire was run on big urban data. The Romans they were incredible record keepers. They built buildings in every city. This is the Tabularia in Rome, which still stands, where they housed their records. They were great administrators. The bureaucracies of great industrial cities and great industrial nations also kept records, and it allowed them to manage cities that were bigger than any cities we'd ever built before. This machine here, and this man, Herman Hollerith, was invented to tabulate the 1890 U.S. Census. It was the biggest, most urban census ever conducted in the United States. And this machine, this man, went on to become IBM. This was the beginnings of IBM, which is now, the basis for the information revolution and one of the biggest players in the smart cities business today. And in the post-war world, if you look at pictures of 1980s Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange, you can start to see that already we were starting to see in the stock exchange what a world of globally connected computer networks would look like. And this is what every office looks like today. This is what every living room in every home looks like today. Dozens of screens and people interacting with those screens. So the city has always run on data and information. This is just an ongoing process. So that's one side of it. And the other side, of course, is global urbanization. We're moving towards complete urbanization of the planet. We hit our first billion city dwellers in 1960. It only took us 50 years to add another 2 billion to get to 3 billion in 2000. We'll be at 6 billion by 2050. So we're really at the tipping point right now. And depending on who you ask, we're doing okay. I don't think we're succeeding. There's a lot of problems, but we're doing okay. We're about to go through another big wave. This will be the real test, whether we can get it right. And then the second half of the 21st century, things start to slow down a little bit. We get to catch our breath. And then, if all things go well, global population peaks in 2100 and starts to decline thereafter. So hopefully our grandchildren will get to start to relax. This is a big deal. We get one chance to get it right, because then we will have the system of cities that we'll live with for several centuries after that. So we crossed this line in 2008. where the world is 50% urban for the first time. A lot of people know this. This gets said at every urban conference. What doesn't get said, that very few people know, is that that year was also an important point for technology. That was the first year that more than 50% of internet subscribers around the world were using mobile devices. So the same time we became mostly city dwellers, mostly urban, we became mostly mobile, mostly untethered is the word I like to use in English. Okay? So we're moving to cities, building buildings, yet we're disconnecting from our wires. It's a very interesting combination, and they're actually very, very closely connected. So we live in a world where we all have mobile supercomputers in our pocket, and we all live in cities. That's the 21st century in two trends, and I think it's what we should focus on. Now, what does this mean for daily life? People are trying to understand this. This is a vision that was published last month by a Japanese futurist, trying to imagine what the future of transportation in a developing world city in Medellin, Colombia, might be like in this mobile, connected, data-rich future, and what the transportation experience on a bus would be like, and walking through a city center when your glasses can overlay information and tell you about points of interest, tell you where you should walk, where you shouldn't walk, when the traffic is coming, when to cross the street, when not to cross the street. It's overwhelming, it's unfamiliar. But what's interesting is it allows the city to function. It allows this chaotic, often dangerous, often scary city to continue to thrive and grow and function, despite the fact that it's almost flying apart at the seams on a daily basis. And it's just one possibility of the world we'll live in. But transportation is an area where things that have not changed for 50 years, 100 years, are changing day by day very, very quickly. And we're seeing that disruption happen almost instantaneously. Now, I'm particularly excited about changes that are happening in one area of transportation, which is buses. Now, you may not think buses are very exciting, but there's a tremendous amount of innovation going on in buses. The Dutch, the French, even the Americans have all, in the last 6 months, seen companies bring to market self-driving buses. These have gotten lost in all the announcements about self-driving cars. These are 8 to 12-person vehicles that drive themselves, very low cost, very high efficiency, very high level of service. They're not scheduled. You don't wait at a stop. You press a button on your phone and they come pick you up. I would argue that these vehicles may be as important to the 21st century as the private automobile was to the 20th century. That's the kind of change that we're talking about here. And we could reorganize our entire cities around the things that these vehicles can do for us. So, smart can change the shape of cities. And I think we need to really think through what the possibilities are. I don't know where I should point this. I know the transmitter is somewhere. And urban planners are just starting to explore what this means. And so you'll see headlines out there. Could self-driving cars allow urban sprawl? Could it allow people to commute for 2 hours because they can sleep in their car on the way to work? Of course, California is the place where these technologies are being invented and they're being bought, and people are trying to understand what they mean. I don't think it's that simple. The automobile was one technology. It dominated the market. It had a very huge appetite for land, and so its consequences for the city were very clear. We live in a world where there's many technologies, and they have very different demands, and they're very flexible. They're, in fact, programmable. That is what they are. And so their consequences are complexity upon complexity. As you see, this is a local firm here in Moscow, Hobby Datum, which has visualized movement of mobile phones in the Moscow area. And what you see is we're now starting to understand the richness of change that can happen in cities. So we're starting to be able to see just how people use these tools to change their lives. Imagine what it would be like if you forgot your phone today. You would barely be able to survive. You use that. That's your Swiss Army knife. That's how you make your living, how you get your children to school. It's how you take care of your parents. It's how you keep your life in order. Without that, you can't survive. It allows you to extend your abilities. So we're just starting to learn this, and we're going to use it to study and organize our cities. So I'll wrap this up. I have a 3P plan for how you can think about what you can do. It revolves around problem solving, partnering, and planning, which I think are three things that cities are not doing effectively around smart. The beauty of this technology is that it's global, right? They're made in China. Well, they're designed in California for the most part. They're made in China. So the phone you buy or the software you buy in Moscow is the same thing I get in Manhattan. This is what it looks like on the back. The difference is when you turn it around, we all get something different because it's custom. So I think buy the best technology in the world, but customize it to what you need for your city. Don't buy the same solution that somebody in another city uses, but buy the same parts and put them together in your own way. I think that's a really important lesson, and there's ways to do that that are effective. Partnerships. The private sector is going to play an unprecedented role in building the smart city because we're doing it faster and we're doing it on a bigger scale with more technology than we've ever done before. This is a diagram that Arup, the consultancy, put together for the Smart London project that shows you just how many stakeholders were involved and are involved in making London a smart city. And it comes down to government, of course, private sector, universities, which still have not figured out what their part is in making the city smart. And a lot of work needs to be done there. And citizens are often not understood clearly what their role should be. But they're the ones that are driving it because they're the ones with the supercomputers in their pocket. And I encourage all of you to read Steve Jobs' biography because no one understood better than Steve Jobs the power of putting computing in people's hands and how that was going to allow them to change the world. He was crazy, but he understood that. And then finally, planning. I published this study last year that looked at 7 what I call digital master plans from 7 global cities around the world. This is basically where sustainability planning was 10 years ago. These are the first cities to sit down and say, look, we got to look long-term at smart technology and how we invested it and what our priorities are beyond a single administration, and to signal for the next 10 years where we're going to invest and what our priorities are. And I think we're just learning how to do it, but it allows cities to focus, to define objectives, to define a vision, and to stop saying that we're just doing this as a hackathon and that we're actually going to make this a long-term project. So I encourage you to keep going in the direction you're going. It's a wonderful city. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony. You talked about transportation. Transportation is a topic that's big for the city. It's big in many regions. Many of you have heard about Hyperloop, and there's a lot of excitement and, pardon the pun, hype around Hyperloop. Actually, we would like to learn a little bit more about that. And I think I'd like to invite Chris Vasquez to come to the stage. Chris is working with Hyperloop. Great to see you here. There's people have a lot heard about this recently. There was, of course, videos of tests in the desert in the U.S. There was a lot of conversations about this in Moscow in the St. Petersburg Forum. Tell us more about what this is and what could this be for Moscow.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for having me. It's an honor. It's very humbling to have you guys take time out of your day to listen to me talk. It's an honor to talk on behalf of all the engineers, all the designers, everybody back in LA and back in Vegas that's helping to make this a reality. So it's fair to ask, as urban planners and strategists, what Hyperloop is. How should we use it, and how should we view it? Is this technology revolutionary? Is it destructive? Is it mythical? We get all these questions. And I think when we talk about how to use it, we are looking to try to do the bespoke solution that Anthony talks about. We realize that not one solution fits every society. In a very basic sense, at a top-level sense, this is 21st century transportation. The way it's designed, the logistics, even the experience is inspired by the past. But it's built for the future. So we talk about immediacy. Anthony, again, kind of mentioned it. When we look at these buses, it's on demand. That's kind of the benefit that you get from the high-speed travel that's allowed. We don't have to wait for this thing to happen. We don't have to wait to get there. You just order it, you walk up, it is there for you. It's safe because we're in a contained environment. What we're allowed to do is isolate ourselves from the environment that causes so many delays, causes so many accidents. We're efficient. So efficiency, in a lot of ways, is us taking advantage of all the advancements of technology that's happened in the last 100 years or so. And we're sustainable. A lot of the architecture, and I'll go into that next, does allow us to create a system architecture that is much more energy efficient. It allows us to take up much less of the land than previous technologies would, previous modes of transportation. Great. So I'm sure you're thinking, this sounds too good to be true. Maybe it is, but I think what you should realize is that there have been so many technological advances that have happened in the last 100 years. That is pretty much the last time it's been since a new mode of transportation has been created. You talk about integrated transportation. So when we envisioned what new transportation would be, we took a step back and we reimagined it. When you think about every other vehicle in the world, what it's really doing is it's overcoming friction. It's the air friction and it's the contact friction. So when you create new transportation, or any mode of transportation rather, needs an engine that's always running to overcome this. So all the efficiencies that you gain in an engine or other modes of transportation is very incremental, because what you're doing is you're just making an engine that is always on, something that's always consuming, use less energy over time. What we're able to do is control the environment and reduce the pressure and use new technologies like passive magnetic levitation and linear motors. And what we're allowed to do with that is reduce all of these things that are barriers. And so now what we can do is use a lot less energy. One of the cool things about Hyperloop is that it is integrated. We don't have to carry an onboard engine. We can actually separate those. And what we're allowed to do is propulse ourselves for a short period of time up to velocity and coast at very, very low drag. And this is great. And Anthony's thinking, you're getting too much into the tech already. But that speed then allows us to do things like packetized travel. It's not moving more things less often. It's not increased communal transportation. It's not 40 minutes to load a plane. It's not an hour to get from point A to point B. We're able to packetize and send things directly to their destination. So if I'm going to New Moscow from here, it's me and a few other people going there. We don't stop along the way. Or if it's me going to St. Petersburg, we don't stop along the way. We go exactly there. And that's kind of the benefit that you get from high speed. So another thing that we get often is, where do you fit in? Are you looking to consume other modes of transportation? Are you a replacement for the plane? Are you a replacement for the train? And we've always seen ourselves as complementary, supplementary to the existing transportation ecosystem. We recognize that all these modes of travel are aiming to solve the problem of medium-term travel that happens on a regular basis. And what this has done is created an overcapacity of our systems. I think it's lost on a lot of people that when they get stuck in traffic or they get stuck in the airport, that this is not a failure of these modes of transportation. This is what these systems were meant to do. They were meant to grow our society, and they have. And now the demand for those transportation systems is so great that we are using them to the point where they're crippling. We are investing so much money in just trying to maintain and upkeep these systems that were never designed to handle the capacity that we're at right now. And so what we're looking to do is say, well, where can we yield the most benefit? And we're solving those problems. And so we see ourselves as a technology that, when introduced, will be optimized for a specific problem and then ease the strain on other modes of transportation. So we talk about some of the benefits. When you start to create infrastructure projects like this, it increases the investment value of the area that they're happening in. It creates jobs. We also use this to connect resources, faraway resources, in times and in distances that we couldn't fathom before. We're able to introduce new modes of mobility to our citizens. Additionally, because this is happening with new technology, this is low carbon, this is green energy. I think that's maybe a supplemental benefit, is that you're getting there faster, yes, but you're using it on a lot less energy. Because we're contained, we can be underwater, we can be under the ground, we can be above grade. This allows us to be almost out of sight, and so we take back the land. And I think that when this new younger generation thinks about urbanization, it's not this mechatronic city that is just full of robotics. They're really looking to us to come up with smarter solutions to that, more aesthetically pleasing solutions. So when we think about transportation, you say, why do we need transportation? I think if you look back over the history of the world, you'll see that every new mode of transportation that was introduced yields significant advances in civilization. The urbanization of cities, 2008 is an example. Automation, it creates new industries. And so I think that when you think about whether or not to invest in something like a Hyperloop or any new mode of transportation, you should see it as an investment in the future. Things that allow us to reimagine what a city is. We can create new social structures. A distributed city is a city that is drawing people to it, and then, when people are drawn to a city, it's creating a lot of problems. And so when you have something like Hyperloop that allows you to move people long distances over short times, it opens up a new suite of solutions to you. You can create distributed cities, and it forces you to ask really interesting questions that we all take for granted. Like, what is a neighbor? What is a neighborhood? What is a city? I think the answers today are all merging to be the same. But in the future, with technologies like Hyperloop and new modes of transportation, I'm pretty excited to know what solutions we come up with. It's really exciting to be a part of forums like this, where I can talk with architects and I can talk with authors and hear what they think their solutions are to the problem, because it makes our technology that much better.
Thank you very much, Chris. A question for you would be:
Sure.
We're talking about transportation. We're talking about this urban population. Does this mean that Hyperloop can allow people actually to live much further and yet still commute? Or what is the number one effect you would expect it to have on a city such as Moscow, from what you know of it?
Yeah, I think that's the most, if we're talking passenger transit, then I think yes. There's something called the Megacities constant. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it basically says that humans arrange themselves such that we like to travel only about an hour to where we need to be each day. So that's 30 minutes here, 30 minutes back. And so we talk about distributed cities, because we're able to because we can move so fast. We don't have to be drawn to the resources. We don't have to be drawn to the city. The city can now be drawn to the people. And I think that's maybe one of the benefits that Hyperloop could definitely bring.
Well, it's exciting to hear about this. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for coming here. technology is impacting not only transportation, not only our daily communications. It can impact the buildings, the houses, the space itself in which we operate. We can be integrated into this. I wanted to turn to the question of architecture, of buildings, of construction, and invite Hani Rashid to come to the stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here in Moscow, and it's wonderful to be able to speak with you. Just a cautionary tale in terms of the design of cities and basically the thinking of life in general. There's an interesting thing that's been said about the difference between a scientist and an artist. A scientist tends to think of the universe as a place where we then become something very, very small and perhaps even one feels a little bit insignificant. The artist spends all of their time trying to make us feel incredibly significant in the universe and something of incredible importance. And I think that duality is so important to think about when you think about architecture, cities, and the design of cities. I'm going to show a project we've done in Changsha, China, and it's the Ecotech City. Which one's the button here? This one? Next, black, white, green. Which one works? Okay. Effectively, this master plan was centered around the idea of building a prototype city from zero. And the essential idea for us was really to build a city starting sort of with the park, starting with the human condition, starting with the experience of life in a city. The master plan itself was developed as a kind of hybrid of a number of different components: a light industrial area, a startup, an incubator area, housing, and an entertainment district. And it was predicated on, you're absolutely right, this thing's impossible, predicated on the fact that China is an interesting place to study in terms of this kind of development, because they're willing to build fast, quickly, and want to engage the 21st century and want to engage contemporary life, and they have incredible problems with density, traffic, a number of other concerns. Changsha, if you know the city, is at a kind of crossroad in terms of a transportation hub, and is seeing itself as a key player in a kind of global network of connectivity. Where do I point this to make it go forward? Okay. So what we started with as the design of the city was effectively a human condition, not so much a data-driven condition or a numeric condition, but the idea of basically a green carpet, a city that, in fact, where people will live in the landscape, will celebrate oxygenated air, will celebrate quality of life and park. We decided to give the city a kind of, let's say, a kind of identity in terms of isolating different zones, places you live, places you work, places you get entertained, places where you shop, and knit all of that together with a kind of state-of-the-art. It could be Hyperloop, it could be another kind of transportation methodology, but something that allows you to, on demand, move around this place quickly. The essential idea being to effectively eliminate all carbon consuming mechanisms. So in building the infrastructure, we decided to look at the road networks, the secondary systems, the transportation hubs, produce a number, because the reality of the city of the future is the fact that cars won't entirely disappear, and when you start to have auto-drive cars and people who still need individual transport or still would like to have individual transport, there are places where these things could in fact lodge within the underground of this prototype city. There must be a trick to this. Okay. I get it. I got to stand right here. Pedestrian and bicycle movement, key to the planning of this city. And landscape. The idea that effectively, once you eliminate basically carbon-consuming mechanisms, you end up with a lot of open space and the potential to engage that space in the public realm and to allow it to be the place in which you thrive and live. So we did a study of how we also anticipated another thing, which is the fact that water coming into cities by virtue of rising sea levels will in fact change the way we think of urban life. So we decided if we don't have cars and we don't have roads and streets and systems, what would happen in fact when we start to introduce water as a key feature of the landscape. So all the housing is basically built on islands and pods where you have access to your mechanisms, to your cars by virtue of app-controlled autonomous vehicles that would arrive at the housing projects, take you to various parts. The rest of the site would be engaged with either auto-drive individual vehicles or bicycles and other transport systems. But the dominance and the focus on green being really key to this project. I'm clicking, and that's the master plan. Sustainability, a major part of any thinking of the future of cities and the way we design them and plan them. So essentially a whole strategy around evaporative cooling, a whole strategy around natural filtration systems by virtue of landscape, green space, and so on. An idea of sustainable strategies in terms of energy and the renewal of energy in the new city. And then, of course, the actual development of the master plan, which then, as you start to put it all together, you have more or less a residential district tied to a creative industrial park district, tied to business residential, an entertainment zone, a shopping zone, and these things all circle around a kind of key feature, which would be a body of water and a park. Key to this whole city plan that we're doing is the fact that most of the waste product is taken underground and robotically removed from the buildings. Most of the supply chain of goods are also underground and driven through, again, robotic control systems to the buildings, a thing called MoveNet. The actual buildings that we've been looking at designing have embedded robotic systems for delivery that are actually part of the floor plate system that bring goods up into people's buildings on demand and deliver those goods to actually people's homes, and also the same thing for garbage removal. And the idea that the entire environments that we're looking at, one of the towers we're looking at is a health tower, where the whole tower is in fact situated around the technologies of health and well-being, and in constant dialogue with your healthcare sort of people. And then again, as I said, waste management and product placement is also part of the thinking of these new buildings. And the key thing in all of this is upgradability and transformability. You heard it earlier, and I think it is key that a city needs to function almost the way we're getting used to with our upgrading of our apps and our technologies. So the idea that the whole infrastructure, that buildings can be thought of now as plug and play, as pieces and elements that can be transformed, transferred out, and put back in. And so we get environments like this. This is a view of the office park area. You can see some of the auto-drive vehicles coupled with public space, coupled with features like water fountains, data surfaces up above, giving people information. Environments like this is the incubator territory of the city, of this small city for 100,000, by the way, which in fact is a kind of, again, a hybrid between public space and technological space. And there's a movie that should run. Can I have the sound up for this? Okay, well, there's sound on this track. What you're going to see here is basically the film that was produced. I'll let this run. Right from the very beginning, the first sketches for the project were really the idea of a networked, interconnected city that in fact is a container of various precincts and zones that work in harmony and in a kind of as a kind of ecosystem. And the whole city, in fact, from technology to nature, acts as an entire ecosystem, which is key to the design. So here you see the layout as I just described, which basically starts with the idea of the green carpet that goes over the city. We then added to that the precincts and zones, so thinking about the various locations of activities, again, from retail to residential to entertainment, and how those coexist. The link to the larger cities, probably Hyperloop connections to other cities in China and around the world. The internal sort of transport system and loop system within the precinct. The connection to the residential district. The water that underpins all of the natural environment, and that's part of the environmental control system for the entire city. And effectively producing a completely healthy, state-of-the-art urban environment in which life is celebrated, in which the human spirit is celebrated. And that's the key thing to this place, is that when we create new cities, we have to think about them in terms of the human dimension. What gives us pleasure? What makes fun? What gives us the ability to have fun? What gives us efficiencies? Here you can see the transport system that goes through the office complexes. You can see here the way the office complexes are also linked by smaller auto-drive bus systems that will link through all of those. That's the incubator labs. And here you see the sort of mix of technology, environment, art. Art is a big part of any kind of upgrade to a modern city. You can see the data surfaces. These are the smaller transport vehicles that connect the housing. The housing is then interconnected by smaller app-controlled on-demand vehicles that are actually coming down from the various towers. This houses about 100,000 people. You can see how all the buildings are built on parks and waterways. So there's also small private boat, auto-drive boats that take you around. This is the retail precinct with a convention center. So this is actually the sort of, let's say, the financial engine behind the place. That's the convention center. That's an entire retail complex in the back. Here you get a sense of the retail center and the road systems that connect the buildings. And then this is a fly through the whole retail zone. And so shopping and retail, which is a big part of Chinese culture, is integrated into the entire sort of smart city that we're creating. And here again is that mix of urban life and technological life. And then at the waterfront, the recreation zones, the yacht club, all wind harnessing machines throughout the whole project that are micro wind harnessing machines for smaller electrical conditions. That's the entertainment hub at the water level. And now we fly towards the entertainment zone and a museum, which is built inside a canyon. And basically these vehicles will take you to that zone. There's actually a small museum and entertainment zone in there, into the canyon. And finally, the view of the project at night. So in the end, if you really think about building new interconnected, smart, technologically savvy, human environments, there has to be an element of magic and mystery to the place as well. That's what really makes cities magnificent, is their romance. And to design romance is not the easiest thing, but that's what we try to do.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Honey. And
Pleasure. Question? Or? Okay.
The future cities, especially in greenfield projects, are obviously a big opportunity. We have our final speaker, and it's also a topic of a new city, a modern project. Anthony Mellows, please. Please tell us about Masdar and what it means for Moscow.
Good morning. Your Honor, Sergei Sobyanin, Mayor of Moscow, distinguished visitors and fellow delegates to the Moscow Urban Forum, thank you for inviting me to present to you what we are doing in the United Arab Emirates. And we started 10 years ago with a major project. The project is part of how we are going to live in the future and how we're going to live within the means of our resources. The importance of Masdar is it's just one small initiative led by the UAE government and particularly the Abu Dhabi investment arm mubadala. And the importance of sustainability and the relationship that technology plays in being sustainable is what we're all about. I guess this is the way to do it. Masdar is only one little piece, and what I want to talk to you today about is this little project called Masdar City, which is a test bed for how sustainable cities in the future could be built and could be managed. But it considers sustainability in a number of ways. And why is sustainability more important than technology? It's because we are going to be living in a world of cities, and how cities are managed, and how the mayor of Moscow this morning told us how important it is to use technology to make the lives of people in cities better. It's about sustainability for human life. This is an example of why cities, rather than nations, are in fact going to be and are the leaders in our future. In 1970, there were 330 odd cities of over 500,000 people. In 1985, there were 500. In 2000, there were 745. In 2015, over 1,000. Look at that rate of growth. And in 2030, 1,350. Now, look at that growth. The significance of that diagram that I've showed you, and look at Moscow. Moscow sits in a geo-economic political realm where the fastest growing cities and where most of the people will live. So what Moscow is doing today will in fact be a green print for how other cities will follow through. And what I'm doing in Abu Dhabi is a tiny little project, but it's a pilot project, big enough to understand technology, but small enough to achieve results quite quickly. That's what is the conventional view of a master plan. That's what Masdar City looks like. I'll give you some dimensions to how big it is. I'm not quite sure where I should point. There we go. No, I need to go back. For those of you who want to understand how big my project is, and I have a team. When I talk about mine, I talk about a full team. That on the right-hand side is Moscow, and on the left-hand side at the same scale is Masdar. So we are in fact not a city, but we are complex enough to model technology on how you develop cities for the future. And that's key. As the mayor said, we need results. It's not about projections. People who live in cities want to know how they will live. So that's what it looks like from the air. We're about 10% built only, 10 or 15% built. In summary, we're 600 hectares. We're a little less than Moscow Center. We're about 3.7 million square meters of building. And here's key. Half of that is residential. And why is that important? Sustainable cities of the future will be walkable cities. And the scale of walking is right here. Some technologies will help us move around. But to really make it sustainable, we need to understand the scale of the human being. So we have several organizing principles, and I'll let the translator read them off the screen. But what's essential about all these sustainable principles is one word: integration. If we don't know how to integrate governance, how to integrate technology, how to integrate personal mobility, how to integrate my desire and your desire, and how to get around the city, we will not succeed. We need to bring minds together. And in my opinion, it's at the level of cities. And what the mayor of Moscow is doing is precisely the right conversation for how cities integrate this. It's not the private sector, it's not the public sector, it's the integration of those drives. So I'm going to just show you some of the ways in which technology is used in Masdar. We measure how technology serves human beings in 10 different ways. We've been doing this for 10 years. We're getting traction and results now as we go. It's about energy consumption. It's about renewable energy provision. Water has been talked about. Construction waste management. How we use something and then it's designed to be used again and again and again. In other words, the whole life cycle. When you come last in a speaker, you always have time against you. But embodied carbon is a good measure of sustainability. And then building performance monitoring. And finally, the economic performance. And why is economic performance so important? It's not a transfer of taxes to benefits that sustainability is about. It's about benefits to everybody at every step of the way. And that's key to understanding the economy. So let me give you a little bit about what we've done at Masdar in the last 10 years.
Anthony, maybe just in the interest of time, focusing on the main messages.
Right, let me go. See, when you come last, it's tough.
You're not last, that's why.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the buildings we're doing. Embedded carbon. Low tech, using sand and using glass reinforced concrete. I'm trying to find out where this clicker needs to get going. Some of the buildings. Using shade, no energy required, how you protect buildings against the sun. And the important thing here is 60% of passive energy can be done by understanding how we work with the sun. You don't need technology, you need brains to figure out how to do that. But it's also about research and development. We've had driverless vehicles for about 8 years at Masdar City. At that time, nobody knew about Uber, nobody knew about driverless vehicles. We're now working to look at the next generation of mobility. We also look at cooling, passive cooling, during the day and the night, using ancient traditions of cooling as well as modern technology. This is going to be a challenge. Can somebody fast forward this for me? Cooling with water. This is key. Cities have to be comfortable without wasting energy. So the comfort zone is what we do. So what we've done in Masdar City is to look at temperature, humidity, and air movement and measure downtown Abu Dhabi on the same day in Masdar City. And we achieve a difference of about 13 degrees Celsius. Now, in the desert, if you can do that, you can do that in cities around the world much more easily. Okay. So we measure our buildings, recycling, waste, 50% on average less energy than elsewhere. And water is important. So what we do, normally you would consume about 11,000. We outperform all the technological standards on how to do it. This is the IRENA building. And this is our imprint, Future Build, Estidama, Sophie. So at the end of the day, technology is in the service of people. And at Masdar City, what we do, as technology changes and grows, we measure how beneficial technology is in urban areas. And at the end of the day, the proof of the concept is people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. We're fighting for the future, but against time. Спасибо большое выступающим. Сейчас у нас начнется...
And now we're about to start our discussion on stage. Let me invite to the stage participants of our discussion, Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Mr. Arkady Dvorkovich, Sergei Sobyanin, Mayor of Moscow, Mayor of Zagreb, Milan Bandic, Mikhail Mishustin, Head of the Federal Tax Service, Gerard Mestral from ENGIE, Chairman of the Board of Directors. Andrei Kostin, Chairman of the Management Board of VTB Bank. And Dan Ringelstein, Director of Urban Planning and Design at SOM. Good afternoon, and we are going to turn to our experts here on stage, and also we will use quotes from different thinkers and architects who gave this topic some thoughts, and I will have short videos after which I'm going to address our participants. And I'd like to turn to Kenzo Tange, who is a technical optimist. This is what he has to say. Can modern technology restore humanity? Can civilization find the channel linking itself to a human being? Can modern architecture and urban space can again be the space for building up human character? All my experience says yes to all these questions, but we can say yes only when modern technology has succeeded in creating in a space a symbol of the spirit of the times, and I'm also convinced that this is possible. Can modern technology restore humanity? Can civilization find the channel linking itself and a human being? Can modern architecture and urban space be again the place for building up human character? My experiences seem to answer yes to these questions, but we can say yes only when modern technology has succeeded in creating in a space a symbol of the spirit of the times, and I'm also convinced that this is possible. And Mr. Dvorkovich, my first question is to you. All these innovations on the global level, what are the challenges that they present for countries and cities as they work with people, as they do training, as they want to attract human capital? Thank you for inviting me here, and Mr. Sobyanin, congratulations on this excellent event. We have listened to some great presentations that were devoted to smart cities, transportation of the future, new cities that are being created from scratch using unified master plans like cities of the future. And there was a very good end to the last presentation, because everything eventually depends on whether people live in those cities, and people are in the center of what we call modern city. Traditionally, we have this chicken and egg problem. What goes first? You need city first to attract people, or you need people who can make this city an attractive one? We all live in large communities. Moscow is one of the biggest megacities of the world. 20 million people living in Moscow agglomeration, and we want to live in a friendly environment for people to smile, to be healthy, to get involved in interesting things, and we need this comfortable and intellectual human environment where we all want to live together in one community. I think there's no simple answer here. Everything is interconnected. Step by step, the city develops, becomes more comfortable. You get more smiling people giving birth to their children, living in a more comfortable environment. And of course, the technologies might help here. In about, or rather, about 20 years ago, there was this point where safety wasn't the number one priority. We had other things in mind, like environment or health of the population, transportation. But today, security and safety are critically important for any city. Unfortunately, we live in that kind of world, and technologies that can give people the best environment from the point of view of security are a priority anyway, because they have to be such that they don't limit our life with extra barriers, so that we could feel our freedom, and freedom could be the main criteria. We already have such technologies. It's based on analyzing big data on modern methods of data analysis, including video and texts and cognitive and neuro technologies that allow us to capture quicker and faster most significant threats for the security of people. And that part is also of critical importance for any city. Any city will have to do that using modern science and global technological companies. We already have such partnerships arising all over. Another important topic is health. Health is, of course, another priority. People want to live longer, they want their children to be healthy, and they want them to be active in the city. And here we have a similar problem. We have these new technologies coming up. First of all, we have remote diagnostics and monitoring of health. We also have these new opportunities to provide healthcare services anywhere. At the same time, we have some breakthroughs in technology and biomedicine. Combined with ITC, it gives us individualized medicine. In our first presentation about this new city in China, that medical services are provided to a person sitting in his own apartment who never leaves it for that purpose. That's what I call a personalized approach, and that is our future. Transportation is another matter. On the one hand, we want fewer cars, and we want our cities to be clean and pure. At the same time, we want fast transportation from point A to point B. We have these Hyperloop-like technologies, even though at the initial stage it will probably be cargo, not people. But it's also important for people so that the movement of cargo does not interfere with the city space and with the life of people. This first stage will be of huge importance for today's cities. Nevertheless, we talk about and think about electrical vehicles and other modes of transport that will become part of our life in the nearest future. UAVs and driverless buses will be the first stage of this transportation. We mentioned some French, Russian, some French, British, U.S. companies, but there are Russian companies like that too. According to our forecast, in 2018, we are going to have some of the first areas with driverless buses, including football championship or World Cup of 2018. Okay, Russia is a huge country, and how can we combine this idea of new cities and evolution of those existing ones? For Moscow, it's of great importance. On the one hand, Moscow has grown, and it can build new city spaces that are less connected with the past. They are not overburdened with some of the things from the past, and regions like Skolkovo and a few other new projects is how we see the future. At the same time, the old, traditional Moscow has to be transformed gradually, and that's what's been done under the leadership of the government of Moscow. A new city is being developed with more comfortable environment, and that's hard because we live in this transformation, and we keep feeling this construction around us, but that's important, that's necessary. It's not just for the new part of Moscow, and that's a huge challenge for any city. On the one hand, we have Skolkovo, we have a new city of Sochi, We have a new town on the island of Ruski in the Far East. At the same time, we need to upgrade Moscow, Kazan, St. Petersburg, older Sochi and new city agglomerations. We do it step by step, and technologies help us in that. I support the principle of the first presentation. We need to understand the problem, what matters for people, and what kind of issue we need to resolve for the people. We need to start partnerships to deal with that issue with some of the best in the modern technologies and in the future technologies. I mean to plan correctly. Unfortunately, I have to apologize. I need to leave for the meeting of the government where we are actually going to develop these plans. Thank you for your attention.
I wish you to have a technological meeting. Well, this, you see, when Mr. Dvorkovich was answering this question, he mentioned 5, 6, 10 different areas where everything is changing. But let's resort to the words of one of the greatest Russian architects, Konstantin Melnikov, what he says about how he built new facilities and how he believes they should be built. I have never used any images, any magazines or any other literature when I was working on my projects. You entirely belong to yourself, to your state of nature, and it's only this letter you rely upon. This awe, this innermost awe, is just like a starry sky on a magic night when you feel a need to cast off all the truth that had outlived its usefulness, to slough off all the trivial habits and concepts, to become nude and exposed in order to fully immerse into the crystal clear spring well of natural ideas. So you see, there is a slight tension. On the one hand, we speak about the softwares, which are very complicated, but on the other hand, we should preserve the aesthetically nice, beautiful environment, because this is also the purpose of the urban development. We cannot sacrifice our landscape, the environment. I have the question to Dan Ringenstein. Well, Dan, your company plans and develops cities. How do you combine technical possibilities with aesthetics?
You gotta press that button, I think.
Problem with the mic? It's better? Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here today. It's an incredible event and turnout. I think the quote that you've just shown really points to the need to find ways and places of inspiration for us all, no matter how small or big we're designing an urban environment. And I guess just to underline a few things and maybe point the discussion slightly differently in some places, before we get into technology and how we use those things to solve real complex problems, I think we need to get better at some of the basics. And this quote really talks about that. What are the things that inspire us about cities? And what's the things that make cities unique? And why is this city very different from St. Petersburg, or how this city is very different from Warsaw or London for that matter? So I think also as designers, we need to reset some of our priorities now. We have all this great technology, yes, but we have some real fundamental errors we've created for ourselves over the past decades. So how do we right this? How do we work harder to build smarter? How do we combat sprawl? I would say we should not support urban sprawl. How do we get away from fossil fuels? How do we create a better quality of life? All these themes were already discussed, I think, earlier. I would say we need some real smart land use planning, and that land use planning needs to be connected to smart transport planning. So these new technologies that are available to us need to be aligned with where we're going to build and intensify our cities. We should be taking advantage of our existing city infrastructures. They're already in place. Some of them are tired and need to be upgraded, but we should take advantage of that to intensify our cities. But then we'll have to make sure they're more livable, make sure there's public places, there's gardens, there's schools for people who are going to be living in these more densely populated urban environments. So moving forward, yes, we have these great technologies, but we need to think really hard about the tools and the technologies we have at our disposal, but what do we really need going forward? All these incredible monitoring systems allow us now to look at how a city is performing. How can we really look at how it's performing from an energy point of view, from the use of water, which could be one of our biggest challenges going forward, but also how we monitor how well we're educating our young people, I think is another monitoring data point we need to really look closely at. I think the revolution of incredible smartphone apps has allowed people to engage in a much more meaningful way in their cities, which is tremendous. It makes the city more user-friendly than it probably ever has in the past. But I would argue some of these things are more reactive technologies. So what's the next move to create more proactive technologies that we as designers can use to make our cities work that much more efficiently, but also to proactively design in the change that everyone sees happening over time? And I guess the last point I make is we really need to work collaboratively, and I think that was points made in a couple of earlier presentations about partnering. Cities are very complex organisms. They're very dynamic. They have lots of different layers, which requires lots of specialist experts, and just everyday people to talk about the issues that they're grappling with. So, and as well as Tony mentioned in his last presentation about Masdar, it is all about the people at the end of the day. So we need to incorporate communities in this thinking, in this design process. We need to make sure the public sector and the private sector interests are both taken into account. Without the private sector, some investment's not going to happen. Without public sector support, some of the major elements of infrastructure cannot be delivered. So how do we bring people more together in our city design process? The world is becoming quite polarized, I fear, looking at the events, particularly last week in the UK and also in the US. How do we work better together as urban communities to solve our problems collectively? So I think that's maybe more questions than answers, but maybe these are questions that could be debated in the talks that are going forward today.
Спасибо, да. Вообще есть точка зрения, что несколько уже...
Well, there's an opinion not to think that we should not think about economy from the point of view of cities, but we should, or from the point of view of countries. On the contrary, we should speak about the economy from the point of view of the cities, megacities. And of course, we need to streamline and build our relations. Every country has its rhetoric, its trade relations. But maybe there are some future trends to build our economy in a different way. But referring to the economy, the modern technologies, quite risky and interesting. Some beautiful decisions could be expensive. But I would like to ask Georges, so let's listen to what Le Corbusier is thinking about that. Let's listen to. Modern technologies allow us to build 200 meters tall buildings. The city center will be 200 meters tall. As the result, population density can be increased fourfold or even tenfold compared to the current numbers, while all the distances will be shortened fourfold. You might say it's only an unbridled pursuit of high speed. That's exactly what it is, for in today's world you will only be successful if you act faster than the others. In order to win this contest, in which you have thousands of competitors and each of them is dying to win, you need to choose the quickest and most certain way, the straightest and the most reliable one. Reconstruction of a large modern city is a truly great battle. Well, it's interesting that Le Corbusier said that urban building built on aesthetics principles only results in huge expenses, and this poses huge burden on taxpayers. And now we understand that taxpayers and the budget merit our attention. Well, he also said that such urban development is not feasible, is not reasonable, because it doesn't bring alleviation into the life of city dwellers. We need to resolve the problems, such as the crisis of the modern technologies, and we should try to find means for self-financing. So these pictures of the future, of the modern world, that will, how to provide self-financing, this is an important question for many cities. Andrei, you often take part in such projects, different intervening projects that should be financed. What's your opinion? Thank you, and good afternoon. In my opinion, Moscow is a unique city, absolutely unique for our country. It differs a lot. I mean, Moscow's role differs a lot from other megalopolises of the world. 20 years ago, the chairman of the bank complaining to me, "You see, we are delivering money every day to different cities and towns of Russia, but in 3 days this money comes back to Moscow." What does it mean? It means that in Moscow we have demand, and if you do something well, then regardless of any economic cycle, be that the residential area, the house or the shopping mall, there will be the user or the buyer who will buy that. And that's it. But there are some factors that for many years were creating barriers for us. But in the last 5 years, we have seen the breakthrough. The first is that now we have clear rules for businesses. Now businesses in Moscow understand how to work. They know how to work based on openness, competitiveness, honest rules. I remember when there was a new team headed by Mr. Sobyanin in Moscow, they wanted to start construction projects, but first they suspended all projects, and there were the rumors that now the new mayor will not allow anyone to build anything new. And then Marat said, Mr. Husnulin said, in order to completely stop the construction, we need to make investors comply with those rules under which they signed. And then it will be possible to perform any construction in Moscow at all. But during the 5-year period, we made everything to make sure that businesses can work according to clear, honest, and easy rules to be able to invest in Moscow. And once again, I repeat that this is a significant change that attracts investments, regardless of the crisis. But does Moscow look like the city which is under the sanctions? No, it's thriving. On the contrary, it's thriving. And it will thrive. And now we have in Moscow the real policy in the urban development area. We discuss here large-scale projects, and this is the combination of high-quality buildings, residential buildings, the real estate in general. This is also the projects on education, healthcare, the set of projects which make our life comfortable. We like large projects, and VTB as investor likes big projects. It's better to invest into big projects than in small projects from the point of view of return on investment. So we use our own assets, but also attract other investors, our partners. And once again, demand for investments into infrastructure is quite high. I would like to give you just 2 examples when this comprehensive approach is used. Next year, we will commission VTB Arena Stadium, but this is not a stadium. This will be a huge complex with a football stadium, with a hockey stadium, and also the entertainment facilities for 1,000 persons. There will be the hotel, offices, academy of sports, and people from neighborhoods. Children can go to this facility. Children can be trained in different types of sports. So this project value is $1.5 billion, and these are our investments. The mayor said that maybe there could be small projects, but if we multiply those projects, that we will have huge mega projects. So together with our partner, we implement one more project, which is called the Moscow Yard. So we bought out 39 old cinemas in the residential areas of Moscow, and all these old cinemas will be turned into centers, entertainment centers with modern cinemas. There will be also sport facilities, catering, or food courts, So this will be the centers of life for neighborhoods in 39 neighborhoods. And traditionally, these cinemas were also like the central cultural point. Of course, mega projects are implemented in Moscow. We will find money for that. As for technologies, we pay much attention to new technologies and everything what is evolving now based on the internet and mobile telephones, smartphones. This is also the future of the banking business and of the future settlement and payment system in Moscow. We work closely with contactless. Under the contactless payment program, we have the single social card of Muscovites. So you see, we try to make sure that our citizens feel comfortable when they pay for the services. We have lots of different programs and we invest into these projects. We believe that this is the future that will create more comfortable environment for our citizens. Thank you for your comment. It's nice to hear about the growth points. I have the question to Gerard Mistale. Your company, ENGIE is the largest energy company. This is the infrastructure company. How can we catch up with all the changes and with all available technologies? How do you plan the projects when we see that there could be new and new solutions? What do investors need and your companies, the companies like you needs in order to focus on new and correct technologies, on right technologies?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And I would like first to congratulate Mayor of Moscow, Mr. Sobyanin, for the extraordinary development of the city. And we are present in 70 different countries in the world. And the only comparison I have in the two big cities in the world are Shanghai and Moscow. But Moscow is taking in consideration at the top the interest of the people. That's really remarkable. Congratulations. Well, my company is an energy company, and I would like to explain the transformation of the energy and their implication for the big cities. In the energy sector, there was finally no real technological breakthrough for 60 years. And now we are living a triple revolution: digital, technological, and cultural. Of course, the digital revolution is impacting all the sectors, but especially the energy sector with the smart grid, smart meters, connected sensors, energy efficiency, big data. The technological revolution is also really impressive. The wind technology, wind turbines, the photovoltaic revolution, the batteries, energy storage, the power to gas, the carbon capture and storage, the micro heat pumps, micro cogeneration. One of the characteristics of this technological revolution is the reduction of the size of the equipment. In the past, we were building bigger and bigger power plants, and now the equipments are smaller and smaller. And between classical plants, power plants, and photovoltaic, you divide by 1 billion the size of the equipment. The third revolution is cultural and societal, with twofold. First, the climate. The climate revolution is quite important, and the COP21 and the Paris Agreement last December has many impact, and it would not have been such a success, tremendous success, without the implication of the civil society and, in principle, the business, and I was in charge of the business dialogue, and the municipalities, the cities. The implication of the cities has been key. But there is also an individual revolution. Individual, the nature of the relationship between people and energy has changed. Now people want to know where does electricity come from, nuclear, coal, renewable. I have an interesting story. 15 years ago, there was a poll in the USA among American people, and the question was, where does electricity come from? And more than 50% of the Americans answered electricity comes from the wall. Meaning that finally you plug and the rest is not important. Today, people want not only to know how electricity is produced, but they want to manage their consumption, they want to optimize, and more often they want to produce themselves their electricity with photovoltaic.
Maybe, just in the interest of time, as we need to go.
And so,
final thought.
The implication for cities is quite important, because in city you have today 75% of the energy consumed in the world in cities and 80% of the greenhouse gases. And so the solution is there in cities. Big cities are key for the energy transition. And for a company like ours, which used to be energy provider of power, provider of natural gas. By the way, we are one of the most important clients of Russia in natural gas. Today, our role is changing. We have to be the partner of our clients in the energy transition. And so we have to be the partner of the cities in particular. And we want to accompany the cities in their energy transition and energy transformation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Okay, thank you.
We're trying to keep to the program, realize the time is a bit short. Вопрос у меня, Михаил Ильич, к вам.
My question is to our next speaker, to Mr. Mikhail Mishustin from the Federal Tax Service of Russia. You did a lot to simplify communication between your authority and citizens. What are the lessons that you have learned based on that program? What kind of and what advice would you give to the cities? Congratulations, Mr. Sobyanin, and I'd like to congratulate your entire team with this great event. Federal Tax Service is actually a service provider to the residents of Moscow. We have a brief 30% video, and this is a description of what we do. Major cities become bigger and taller, and a lot of people are attracted to cities. They come to the cities to live and learn there, and all these new people build new companies, a lot of new big and small companies. To have even more companies and more jobs, you need comfortable conditions for business. The bigger the business, the better it works, the more citizens are employed, the more taxes are collected, and for that you need new and comfortable services, and for that you have to gather a lot of data, and now you're talking about big data, and as you analyze the big data, it allows you to optimize your solutions for the tax policy of the government, and the citizens can build their relations with tax authorities. Money help the city to survive and live and develop. Taxes are not just money. Taxes are also technologies. And any modern city has to do with technologies, and tax management is also based on technologies. Mr. Townsend this morning said how digital maturity is one of the key values to build high-quality cities. In the same way, digital maturity is connected to the area of taxes, how we can provide high-quality service to our citizens on time. Usually, when we talk about urbanism, we talk about comfortable housing, good transportation, high-quality education, and medical services. But digital maturity and your opportunity to get this high-quality service is another important feature of how attractive your megacity is. Now, just briefly about taxes and how we do it. Together with the government of Moscow, we did a lot already. The average time of waiting in line in a tax inspectorate is only 8.5 minutes, and you can get any service online. We have 88 million visitors to our website, and a lot of those requests and visits saved a lot of time to all these people. And in the future, if we're talking about e-government, whether it's taxation or any other service, we needn't forget that today the main means of talking to the environment is this mobile device. PC is no longer important in that sense. And one of those mobile devices is more powerful than what both the US and the USSR had in the 50s when they worked on space exploration. And these capacities are going to expand. And again, the purity, the cleanness of your data is just as important as the purity or cleanness of your streets. You know, if you have poor foundation of your entire building, what's the use of talking to how Wi-Fi works on the 30th floor? And what I'm saying here, municipal services, federal level services should be just as easily available to human beings as good transportation, housing, healthcare or education. Thank you. Thank you very much. In the interests of time, for the presentation, for those presenting at the end, it's always difficult. And now I give the floor to Milan Bandic, Mayor of Zagreb. What are the three main technologies for Zagreb? What are the three main spheres that influence the life of the city? What are the three main technologies that influence the life of the city?
Hvala lijepo. Dopustite prije svega da
Thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Sobyanin for this invitation, and together with my team, and congratulations on this urban forum. Not long ago, we actually met in the town of Amsterdam. Regardless of where people live, the problems are the same. In Europe, pretty soon, 80% of the population are going to be living in the cities. That's what we mean by urbanism. There are three things for Zagreb. This is my 17th year as the mayor of the city. This is a relatively small city in a relatively small and beautiful country, but it's like in Moscow in Russia, and Zagreb is just as important for Croatia. And we haven't visited Moscow for 5 years, and last day I took a walk in the city center. I saw how the city was changing and how they transform their public spaces. Congratulations to my colleague, Mr. Sobyanin. And let's go back to Zagreb. The main idea and mission of our administration is improving the everyday life of our citizens. Zagreb has the population of around 900,000. Altogether in Croatia, we have about 4.5 million. We are a small country, and it means that we have efficient governance and the use of new technologies. Another task that we have is to provide logistics to our entrepreneurs, and number three is our strategy or plan. We have it until 2020. and also another one will be developed until 2030. We want to include 3 or 4 main factors here, including working with our residents. It's also cooperation with business and national government. And number 4 is our cooperation with scientists and experts. This is our success formula for Zagreb. This is a relatively small city with quite a bit of problems, and at the end, let me tell you this. All technologies, all inventions are based on the needs of a human being, and the human being is the orchestra conductor here. And here, one needs to keep up with time and respond to all challenges of the time. Congratulations on excellent choice of the topic for this forum. Again, congratulations to the mayor of Moscow. And I speak as a colleague of yours on behalf of all residents of Zagreb and all those who are here with me. Congratulations again, and thank you. Okay, Mr. Sobyanin, why don't you summarize the results of our today's plenary session? Distinguished colleagues, thank you for your active participation in the discussion. We discussed these most important problems, including the development of cities. Thank you for the great ideas that you voiced here, for the excellent projects that were presented. I have to say that as we build new cities in the deserts and elsewhere, as we resurrect and upgrade older cities, all that is to reach and meet new tasks in compliance with new ideology. And there's much in common there. We need to set up such a city, urban environment where one could live and work and get recreational opportunities within the walking distance from their house, minimum movement, and the most comfortable city environment. And this is what I think they call new modern urbanism. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, we understand that the cities, and especially metropolises, megacities, they are not just a rural environment. This is a melting pot of different financial flows and interests, and the development of a city is always this compromise between your desire of an ideal picture and the dynamic development of progress and technology. And what was said about investments in Moscow and construction in Moscow tells us that we tried in these years to find this compromise between interests of investors, developers, and citizens. We revised our ideology. We are more careful about how we develop the city and its former industrial zones. We develop transportation infrastructure more carefully. We focus on the improvements and beautification of both the suburbs and the center. We try to introduce new ideology and mentality into the development of our city. If you felt like we were okay, we were successful in some of that, that's already great. Thank you. And I'd like to thank all the residents of Moscow who actively transform their own city. Thanks again. Human being is in the center, and all other technologies and plans are built around this human being is a great idea. I'd like to thank all the participants and experts I apologize for the delay in our schedule, but let me announce that 10 minutes later we will start our next session here and our open interview. Thank you for your attention and good luck at the forum.